Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about offsets, particularly offsets that you're going to use to go around obstructions, be it coming up and over top of the obstruction or coming around the side. It really doesn't make a difference when you're dealing with offsets. It's just you're going around something. I've already dealt with box offsets, so I'm not going to touch those. And the piece of pipe I have here, I've already put in the box offset I need for this configuration. So when doing offsets to go around an obstruction of some sort, you need a couple different measurements. First off, you need the measurement how far away is the point where you're starting, or box, or whatever you're starting from that point to the edge of the obstruction itself. So if I take a measurement right from the top of the box to the obstruction, I have about 20 inches. So it is 20 inches from the inside of the connector, the top of the box here, to the bottom side of the obstruction. The second measurement you need is how tall the obstruction is. So in this case, I just have two 2x6s stacked on each other. My obstruction is 3 inches tall. Okay. Once we have those numbers, 20 inches between and about 3 inches out, we would refer to the offset chart, which will be up on screen now. So your first number is your degree of bend. Your second number is your multiplier. Now, what does the multiplier actually do? So basically what it is when you have a piece of conduit, and I'll take the conduit right here, I'll just put it to the side right now, line it up with the bottom of the box. What that is your number, which we had, which was 20 inches from top of the box to the bottom of the obstruction. That's where you basically put your first mark. Your multiplier, depending on the degree of bend you're doing, is how much back you have to apply your second mark. So in this case, it's fairly simple math because I'm going to use the 30-degree bend in this case. 3-inch rise times the multiplier for a 30-degree bend is 2. So 3-inch rise times 2 is 6 degrees. So I would put my first mark where basically the obstruction is going to be, and my second mark 6 inches back. Now the third column of that chart is the shrink. Now what that means is as you offset something, so I'll kind of use my hand here, as you offset something, you go over, as you come out further and further, the top of my hand is actually coming down further and further. So what that is depending on the angle that you're bending these conduits at, the pipe is actually getting a little bit shorter. You would use this mostly if you were trying to hit another conduit on the other side, or if you're doing 4-point saddles, 3-point saddles, that sort of stuff, where you have to have a correct measurement, and you want to make it look exact. You want to make it look professional when you're doing this. So you calculate your shrink, and you apply your shrink just by adding that number to depending on how many inches the obstruction is up. So in this case, I'm doing a 30-degree bend. The multiplier is 6, or the multiplier is 2. So I'd be basically adjusting my pipe back 6 inches, 3 times 2, and the shrink is 1/4 inch for every inch of height there is. So in this case, because there's 3 inches of height on this obstruction, my total shrink for that conduit means it will be roughly 3/4 of an inch shorter than just the length as it is right now. It won't reach quite as far. Okay, I hope that explains the shrink of the conduit decently enough. So now that I have all my numbers, I'm going to start marking up my conduit. So if I line up my conduit here, I'm going to assume that when you're doing this, you already have your offset in place, because the offset down here would adjust your numbers slightly, but overall it won't be a massive deal. In this case, we have our 20 inches from the bottom of the conduit to the bottom, or the top of the box to the bottom of the obstruction. So I'm going to put my first mark at 20 inches. Now, keep in mind, we do have the shrink value also. So I'm going to add that to the total measurement of my conduit. So instead of 20 inches, I'm going to put my mark at 20 3/4 of an inch. That will account for the total shrink of that conduit and make it so that the 90 is right at the the offset is right at the edge. And it'll make it look nice. Okay. And I am using marker just to so it shows up on camera here, and it's easy enough for you guys to see. Typically, I would not be using marker for this though. So now that I've made my mark, I'm going to be putting marker all the way around my mark, putting marker all the way around the conduit, just so that if I do have to take out a small bend, it will be easy enough. I can line up my bender nice and easily. The second mark I need is basically the multiplier of the offset I'm doing. I'm going to be doing a 30-degree offset. So that 3 inch times 2 will be 6 inches. I'm going to put my second mark. If I straighten the tape measure here, first mark, line up my tape measure with my first mark, and my second mark goes at 6 inches. Okay. And then I am going to take my marker and I'm going to put a mark again all the way around the conduit, just so I can see it. And if I do again have to take some out, it's easy enough to do. The last step really before you start bending is just remember which mark is your first mark and which mark is your second mark. Should be fairly obvious that this was my first mark here, this is my second mark here. But if you do have to label it for, if it helps you out, label it 1 and 2. All right. I will get into bending the conduit now. So now that we have our marks made on our pipe and we're ready to start bending, there is one thing you still do have to remember. When you're looking at your marks on your piece of conduit here, so we do have them, they're all set up, ready to go. This right here, the part that's over top of this, or will be over top of that, call that the no-go zone. Do not bend into that area. So if you set up your bender to do your first bend like this, what's going to happen is as you bend that over, this half right here is actually going to be the part that bends, the part that's supposed to be over top of your obstruction. So working basically to the end, you want to bend away from the spot up here. So I'm going to set up my first bend, and I'm always working towards myself, so I don't basically ruin the first bend I did. And in this case, I'm going to set my offset, and please make sure if you did do the box offset first, it is all lined up nice and straight, which that looks pretty good. Line up your mark right there, your first mark, and you're going to bend your 30 degrees you're going to bend to the 30-degree mark. Okay, make sure everything's nice and straight. Right there. Okay, 30-degree bend. We're just going to bend down in a nice smooth motion down to 30 degrees, and that's where we stop. Okay, my second bend then, I'm going to take the bend I did, and right now it kind of looks odd because this basically right here has to be against the wall. This bend is the bend that's going to actually kick this down to cause your offset to be nice and level. So we flip that conduit around, we line up our second mark, make sure everything's nice and straight, just like this, and you're looking right down the conduit, right down the top here, and you're trying to line it up as best you can, make sure everything's nice and straight. Once we're lined up, we're going to do our second 30-degree bend, nice smooth motion all the way down, and we're lined up right about at 30. And again, if you're a little bit off, something happens, you have those marks, you can readjust. So now that I've made those marks, I'm going to try this out, see how I did. Into the bender. Not bad. I could put a little bit more in there, but overall, that's not too bad at all. And it would basically be ready for a strap. So I just wanted to put that on and then just give you a look and see exactly how the offset actually did. So again, it's not too bad. There's a tiny gap there, but put a strap on it, it would be perfectly fine. And you can see that with my shrink calculation, the top of that bend actually lined up perfectly with the bottom of the obstruction, which is exactly what you want. And then coming down the back of the pipe there into the conduit itself, and that's basically your obstruction offset. All right, thank you.